And that's why, scalability is important for us, because we come from a setup where, there was just the homepage and there was no pages. And no matter how good you are and how big is your domain, just one page, you don't go very far. And our job was to build a presence on the web. And we see that like our ability to scale is related to how fast we build content, we build products.
Before we jump into today's episode, I'd like to give a quick shout out to the sponsor for this episode, Ahrefs. Ahrefs provides you with an all-in-one SEO toolset that does everything from rank tracking to backlink analysis, keyword research, and technical audits. The best part, you can now use Ahrefs Webmaster Tools for free to identify and prioritize optimization opportunities for your website, see all the keywords that your web pages are ranking for, take a close look at the websites that link back to and refer you in their content, and analyze other websites to find out what drives their rankings. Visit ahrefs.com/AWT and sign up for free. And now, back to today's episode. Hello, everyone, and welcome to another episode of the SaaS SEO Show. I'm your host, George Cassiotis, and today I'm very happy to be joined by Fabrizio Ballarini. Fabrizio leads organic growth and SEO at Wise, a financial company powering money for people and businesses in their increasingly global lives to get paid, to spend in any currency, wherever you are, whatever you're doing. Fabrizio's team mission at Wise is to acquire customers at zero cost by building products, platforms, and content that educate and solve customer problems. Before bootstrapping his current team at Wise, he used to consult enterprise clients across finance, e-commerce, and tech at Neo, at Ogilvy, which is Ogilvy's performance marketing agency. He's passionate about search engines, obviously, online communities, startups, slightly obsessed with exchange rates. I guess it makes sense since he's working at Wise, and bringing transparency to the finance industry. Fabrizio, welcome to the show.
Hi, everyone. Thanks for having me here.
So even though I said quite a few things about your background, could you please, I would like people to hear from you, what has brought you to where you are today through this long journey, obviously. A couple of things about you, and then we can move forward with the nitty-gritty.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. I've been at this, initially startup called TransferWise, now Wise, for quite a while, almost one of the last standing members of the marketing team. And things move pretty fast, so it's pretty unlikely for someone to stay 6.5 years at such stage. What brought me here initially was just mostly being tired of consulting for very big companies that were not doing most of things that we were discussing in calls, and things were not moving. So that's why I eventually said, okay, let me try to join a more flexible and younger company. And at that time I had no idea whether Wise was going to be successful or not. It just looked like a good job, so that's pretty much why I joined. And then fast forward these days, in the last few years, we did a bunch of things. Originally in the first 3.5 years, we mostly build our SEO teams, myself, I mostly build the SEO teams within there. And that went from figuring out how to produce content. So we have now a quite large editorial team producing content in all the markets where most of the markets where we are available. We have a technical product team that build most of our website that you can see when you're logged out. It goes from tools to calculator, landing pages, as well as the other CMS that we use across the board. And then, that was pretty much the first few years of my work. And then in the last, 2-3 years, I'm still working in this area. And on top of it, we joined a bit closer other teams within marketing. One was affiliate, mostly because we realized that the majority of the affiliates that we had in our portfolio ended up doing SEO in the same way that we were doing SEO. Our industry lifetime value, or at least for our core product, the money transfer product, or the CPA in the industry is pretty low, and it's unlikely the company can successfully run ads on top. So they have to acquire traffic organically, even as affiliates. And that was one of the first like changes from just doing SEO that I had throughout this period. And then more recently we joined with like other teams like CRM, social media, yet everything that involves creating content and running anything that is free without giving money to ad platforms and stuff like that, which is something that other colleagues do. My remit stays within what you don't pay.
Okay, I like that. Full disclaimer: we are a Wise customer, but for people, yeah, of course. But for people who are not aware of Wise or TransferWise, could you please share a couple of things about what Wise is, especially particularly for businesses? Let's say that someone from a SaaS company listens to this episode. Should they be interested in what Wise does, or should they not?
Yeah, I think like without repeating the PR approved version of what we do and what we are, generally we see a lot of businesses from very small, one person business freelancer type of setup to larger enterprise. What our product helps them to do is to better navigate, paying and getting paid across borders. This is the first use case. We have a lot of other features for businesses, stuff like accounting integration and other stuff that helps them then to manage the accounts, but pretty much is an international account for businesses who do business cross-border across the world. And that's what, and then the advantage in general is mostly around the fees when it comes to the payments, because historically, most of the providers out there haven't been either very transparent or very cost effective of that. Second is convenience of the service, right? You can have bank coordinates in some of the markets where we operate. You can pay many other markets. This allows you to do, for instance, from Europe to have a US routing number, so that your US client will pay directly to that routing number, as opposed to doing a domestic payment, as opposed to having to do an international payment. And then it's your choice to manage currencies and accounts within your Wise account.
Okay.
To me, in terms of like my experience also as having a one man small little gigs, that's what I use it the most for.
Yeah, okay, that makes sense. Thank you for explaining. Now, as I was preparing for this episode, I was like, well, the first question that I want to ask is, how was the experience of changing the name from TransferWise to Wise, which I assume, was and maybe still is huge for you. But I would like to learn specifically from an SEO standpoint, what has this experience taught you? What were the big lessons that you got from changing such a big brand name? Please.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Maybe like first disclaimer, I didn't ask for it, or at least if it was me, I would have thought a little bit more. But still, at some point, we realized that our services have changed quite significantly from the early days, and then we wanted to have like a brand name that was more open to support different product services and not just being related to money transfer. And when it comes to SEO, it took quite a while before even pressing the button on the domain, in the sense that we wanted to make sure that we were going to be okay regardless of the technicalities of switching domains. Obviously, the word Wise is not a word that didn't exist the day before we decided to rebrand. So there was a bunch of entities across the web called Wise. There was a bunch of domains that we necessarily didn't own yet. Some we still don't own them, called Wise. And then there's also quite a bit of legal implication with companies across the world that might have had this brand name. This is before you even think about, okay, I have to do domain switch in SEO. So yet we were involved, obviously, because we had to assess whether it was possible for us to do SEO with a bunch of conditions that were out there. So this lasted for about a year. And then at some point, someone said, okay, fine, we do it. And, you know, there's kind of an agreement between people. And then we probably started like 6 months or a very intense quarter of prep and phasing, in the sense that we decided not to have a big bang launch, but we phased the switch. We went live with 2 domains, one blocked by robot and one the old one. And the reason why we did a bunch of this thing, there's a talk at Brighton SEO from Lucia, the person who leads technical SEO within the team, and there's a bunch of other talks. The reason why we were quite like sensitive in switching and we had multiple phases was mostly because on the same domain run something like a few billion a month worth of payments. So there was just not the technicalities of like switching, doing redirects and ranking for the same keyword that we had before, but there was a bunch of other services that were making API calls and had to ensure that this thing was working. So the priority was to make sure that the customer service and payments were staying alive correctly. But then within that, we had a bunch of checkpoints for SEO to make sure that we were not compromising any of our art requirements in order to satisfy someone else's goals. I think the key, it went well, you know, to summarize, it went well in the sense that like Google understood probably within a month or two that the brand changed without us doing pretty much not much. We updated all the scheme and all that kind of stuff, but that is the easiest thing. Also, you know, if you have 10 million customers that are Googling every day, TransferWise, it's not that the day you do a press release and you switch domain that they will say, okay, now let me Google the new word, right? So these people are still, some of them are still Googling TransferWise to date, right? Like 1 year and a few months into it, right? So that, from that standpoint, like brand was probably the easiest thing in terms of even knowledge panel and stuff like that. Also because, you know, these events are accompanied by a bunch of PR and a bunch of other stuff happening at the same time. On non-brand, which is pretty much what our teams is judged upon, we don't reward the SEO team for brand traffic at Wise. The reason why is that today 60-70% of our growth comes from word of mouth, people telling their friend about it. And when they do, they Google Wise. So you can't take credit for someone telling their friend to Google Wise in the SEO team. So like what we judged ourselves upon, which is non-brand traffic, obviously there have been few errors of the website that were hit a little bit more than other, but it was never more than, I don't know, 10-20%, and was pretty much everything within a year recovered. So the other bit is the way our traffic composition is very hard to judge from the outside, because we have millions of visits. We have product and tools and calculator directories that drive millions of visits, but this is just because they're built on a lot of long tail. But then within those millions of visits, there are only few visits that matter in terms of financially and revenue. So the actual impact on traffic has been okay, but there was some impact. The actual impact on our performance in terms of like a team and growth didn't change a lot, because the core stuff was pretty much fine. We didn't have a lot of impact there. So yeah, overall it went well. We were super strict in the sense that within the people and within the, you know, the core group shipping the switch, we had always like our lead in there and all our developers in there. Within the SEO team, we have a set of developers embedded within the team that were also working on specific stuff, things like auto replacing the word TransferWise with Wise on the blog, or changing some hard-coded stuff that we had maybe somewhere else. And so yeah, like overall was okay. And you know, I wouldn't keep doing it, but I at the end of it, I realized that it's possible to do it without a gigantic mess. But then it requires a lot of being strict. We had few situations where we had to roll back, or we had to veto changes that were happening, just because we thought they were too risky for us, and so we had to stop other teams in the company releasing because of it. But then that was okay. Probably the hardest part, if I have to, not the hardest part, but the part that was more bizarre for us, is like before we decided to do a clean TransferWise is now Wise, every path after stays the same. Those people, doing the usual, what if we do transfer.wise? What if we do wise/transfer, and then we redirect just the home page to that folder? I'm like all this kind of assumption, and often they come from a product manager who look at the Gmail, or they look at the Google Drive and they say, oh, look at this, Gmail is on a subdomain and it must be fine. And I'm like, yes, but we're not Google, right? We are a relatively big domain, and we're probably gonna survive at the end of it, but we're not Google, so we can't afford to pick whatever path we want just because it reads well, or just because if we moved a domain that it took us like 5-6 years to build to a subdomain, I wouldn't necessarily wish it to many people, right? Or if we start breaking down, because also on wise.com you have our consumer products, you have our business product, you have all the languages, right? So if you start breaking down section of the website into subdomains, is pretty much a recipe for disaster. So we tried to be very, very clean in terms of what was TransferWise became Wise, exactly the same website. No, and I think that's why most of the people end up getting it wrong, because they try to cook a redesign within it, and then they try to, in the meantime we move these two sections of the website to this other place. In the meantime we redo this, in the meantime we redo that, and we try to make sure that we could easily retro on what changed, as opposed to changing 50 things at the same time, and then you're like, okay, then maybe in the meantime there's like an update, and then you're like, okay, now you just throw it and say, oh fuck it, now we just work on next year. There's no point of trying to fix the past, right?
Because you add layers of complexity. I get that, and I like your approach, and I agree. And I think that overall, judging from the performance of the website, which obviously better than anyone else, from the outside, as an outsider, I would say that the brand name change was wise. So you did a good job overall, and from an SEO standpoint as well. I mean, maybe there have been some losses here and there, but overall, I would say that it's a very successful case indeed. Now, as I see it, and you mentioned it earlier, Wise is a product with a low lifetime value, LTV, meaning that you need high volumes for acquisition in order to, get revenue. How do you manage to do that? Is it through these calculators, through this kind of product-led SEO approach? How do you manage to get high volumes?
So I mean, the subject that we have low LTV is really relative, to be honest, right? Is if you compare obviously money transfer to mortgages and loan, definitely, right? Like if I am tomorrow, I build an affiliate website, if I'm money saving expert, compare the market, and have to judge the revenue of these two categories, definitely, right? Like you could consider money transfer low LTV. Then within money transfer, there are pockets of user and like different behaviors, right? There is the person who send 10 euro to their friend. There is the business who trades like million of pound and euro every month. So we have very, very different sets of user. The biggest challenge, I don't think, is the LTV, especially these days where our product isn't just money transfer. I think the biggest challenge is that, at least with regards to money transfer, there is no transactional demand that is very, very big. And it's not a matter of like the economics of the product, but it's more around the fact that if you've never been told by your bank or by your money transfer provider that this thing costs something, if everyone tell you that it's free and zero commission, you're from, when you go on holiday, you always see this zero commission exchange rate and all these kind of things. If you've never been told, you don't shop around. The reason why we switch electricity bill is because every month we get the bill and we're like, oh wow, it's too high, let me switch, right? The reason why you search for a mortgage or like a credit card on a price comparison website is mostly because you are aware of the fact that there is a price attached to it, right? With regards to money transfer, most of the people, and that's why most of our job is to try to educate customers. And if most of the people don't know that they're being charged, they don't know how to calculate really well how they're being charged, and therefore they don't search. If tomorrow you have to rebuild booking.com, people know how to Google for a test. There's a ton of search volume for that. And you don't have to think too much. That's why eventually Google end up tapping into these spaces, right? But the reason why we are safe that Google is not going to build a money transfer product, because people don't know that they need to search for it. We still run PPC and transactional keywords. We still have transactional landing pages, but majority of our customers, or majority of the people that do money transfer, don't initiate these with a transactional shopping query, right? With best money transfer provider or online money transfer, this classic keyword that you would expect. And that's why we have to go very, very broad in trying to capture people across all sorts of intents that they have, from when they calculate the rate, from when they think to relocate to another country. It doesn't matter, right? We are pretty much open to everything. And obviously this helps also the subject of the user economics, because the day you figure out how to scale traffic more, the cheaper it gets at scale to acquire that traffic. But then that traffic that is very cheap and very scalable and long tail is also low converting compared to the high transactional traffic. So it's not necessarily a play for the sake of the LTV of the user. It's mostly a play to find the user. Then it kind of helps, but yeah, they're not necessarily constrained by each other at this point in time. The SEO team is without being arrogant, we know this within the business, and we are aware of it. Is the best investment that we had, and the channel that pay back investment the fastest. The blocker on growth is mostly building stuff and people, right? We come, and that's why scalability is important for us, because we come from a setup where there was just the home page and there was no pages, and no matter how good you are and how big is your domain, just one page, you don't go very far. And our job was to build a presence on the web, and we see that our ability to scale is related to how fast we build content, we build products. The only thing that we don't do within the SEO team is link building to date. Trust me, we have plenty of arguments on whether we should do it, or where we should do it, how we should do it. It's not that people in our teams are not aware about it. We just still don't do it to date. The early days was simply coming from the fact that we didn't need to, because we, whether how do you rank with a page and with the links? We had a ton of links, but we had no pages. So we said, okay, let's start building a lot of pages. And to date, I'm still in the mood of let's build more pages, because I want a gigantic website. There are some people are like, yeah, but what if we have a bit more links here and there? And so we have this discussion. Today, we haven't quite formalized any stream of work around this. Again, because also the people that we have in the business to date are people who are relatively technical, or people who are relatively focused on content creation, as opposed to just to the aspect of acquiring links. But yeah, that's how it went so far. Maybe it will change, but let's see.
Who knows? I have some ideas about link building. By the way, we have seen it work for our own website and for many clients. Obviously, I guess it's a debate, but I would say that link building in general can work well in several cases. Not in all cases, but in several cases it can work well. Now, one thing that I'd like to know is how do you evaluate initiatives within Wise? Meaning that you have an idea about a new section on the website. How will you evaluate whether this is something that it is worth investing time and resources into, or you know what, let's leave it for now, it doesn't worth it?
Yeah. There are roughly two approaches to that, mostly because we have roughly two type of content. We have editorial and unstructured content, and we have structured content, which is tools, calculator, landing pages, and stuff that is built a little bit with developer, a little bit within a CMS, but it tend to be a more templated structured content. For the editorial content, there's no particular structure around that, in the sense that each person dedicated to a market or a product writing content every month dedicate X amount of time on researching as well as writing and producing stuff that is for discovery, as opposed to topics that we know that work. So each month we try to allocate X amount of resources to a topic that we didn't cover before. We try to explore obviously what's possible within there. We have a sense on what the LTV and the payback of the topic could be based on similar topic that we have written. We had a bunch of data these days that obviously we didn't have before. We look at stuff like what was the opportunity in terms of volume and things like that. But there is the approach on testing or evaluating is as easy as trying to do a little bit of that content and see how it does. Also because, by the time you produce an article to the time that this article get indexed, start driving traffic, and then eventually drive user, and then you can evaluate the value of those users, it takes a little bit. So the early days of this editorial operation, we are literally carpet bombing topics without, we had an idea on what to do, and eventually some of the stuff proven to be sensible. It's not that we're going in the dark, but we didn't have such confidence as much now, mostly because of data. Right now, if you tell me a topic that we kind of have written before, I can already estimate, how much revenue we're going to generate out of this each article type of thing, or at least this is the kind of guess that we try to do. But in the past we didn't. So this is for editorial content. Then we have another part of the team who works on products, landing pages, calculators. Some of it can be done roughly similar through a landing page CMS that we have built, and we have built a bunch of features in there. There's a talk that I did a few years ago about how we build some of the features within that CMS using APIs and things like that, where we can, build a template in a CMS and then with a couple of acts, scale it a little bit just to see how it would look like. But then at some point, if you really want to be serious about like a set of pages or landing pages or product, you need to scope it a bit better. You need to work with developers to build in. So that's where we yet have roughly the same approach sometimes in evaluating opportunities, but then in other instances, you either go all in or not, right? You cannot have an example could be booking.com with half of the city in the world, that you can book an hotel, right? Or in a country, you have booking.com in Germany, but you don't have Berlin, right? So you either go all in and building it or you don't. And that's where, again, we look at similar product or similar intents, what the conversion rate looks like. We obviously try to phase the development of it. So the first version of that maybe is the same set of pages, but with a significantly less fancy calculator on it, or less investment on some of these aspects. Because to some extent, Google is looking at the intent of the page, is looking at what it does. But if you have a block of JavaScript that does X, Y, Z, they're not at the level where they can often, quantify the quality of it. So you could have exactly the same page, but with a calculator that doesn't do a good job and still can rank. So sometimes we do that, but then knowing that at some point in time we have to go back and build a calculator or build an applet that is actually useful for user, because otherwise it's going to rank for a little bit, but then it's not going to fly forever, right? If it doesn't do what it's meant to do. That's approaches that we have, but yeah, in that case, it's a bit more complex in the sense that it's a bit harder to bet. Also because engineering time is not unlimited. We have engineers dedicated to the team, somehow in marketing, but I've never been in a position where I have engineers that we don't know what to do. And so it's often the case where we have to choose a bit what to do. It's already a relatively privileged position, because most of the people that I speak to in-house, they have to convince someone else that this is a good idea, and they have to convince someone else engineering team that they should do something related to SEO, as opposed to us, that we literally have these engineers kind of in the team. But then at the same time, we end up owning end-to-end most of these logged out pages. So there's not a product team or someone else that is owning the web experience, but is us. So eventually we need engineers to build them, right? So that's how it works. But yeah, these are roughly the two way. From experience, there have been periods where we where we decide not to bet too much on new stuff, and in the short term they help, because obviously we can focus on improving section of the website that we know that are performing well, and we know already what could be the effort, the return of working there. But then on the long run, every period that we don't do discovery of new intents, then we feel it in a year time. So if this quarter we don't do any bet, in 1 year time, I know that there will be a dry quarter in terms of like what chunky stuff to build, right? And this has happened. It's fine. I would love to fix it, but we haven't quite figured it out how to go around it. Yeah.
I would like to record this specific part and just share it with new prospects that we have, and our clients as well, because it's exactly right what you just described. Like, SEO takes some time, even for a website like Wise. So if you don't do anything this quarter, how can you expect to see the outcome of a new initiative or effort, the next quarter or the quarter after that? So I think that it makes sense, and I like the way you broke down everything around how you evaluate new initiatives. Now, one thing that fascinates me about Wise's organic search performance is that your website is translated / localized, I don't know which term you use internally, for several countries in several languages. I guess these are the markets that you operate. Can you please walk us through the process of localizing a page, and how do you know whether this is something that we should localize or not? It doesn't have search volume, or I don't know. How do you make these decisions?
Mm-hmm. Yeah. I mean, serving the right language to user is hardly a wrong choice, right? And actually is also very cheap compared to figuring out how to serve different intents that you haven't worked out how to produce content before. We don't just translate everything. There is, again, part of the website that are written for the language, from the beginning, researched in the language, written in the language. So all our editorial content, at the early days a little bit, but we abandoned this pretty immediately. So all our editorial content is done by native people in the right languages from the beginning, so we don't localize it or translate it. The other type of tools, calculator, landing pages, they're often done in English and then localized to some languages. We have an in-house translation team under our teams. Originally, it was just some people from customer support, because obviously they were speaking the language of our customer that were helping out. And then with time, we officialized that. And in that case, there is a bit less, making it for the country, but it's more working against localizing templates. We have crowding strings, in the sense that if tomorrow you want to launch a new language, you just do a config change to enable that folder for that product, and then the translator get a bunch of strings in crowding. Once they do them, magically the strings get uploaded on the website, type of thing. And we worked on building a bit this tech setup, but then it's pretty smooth and it works relatively well. There are cases where this approach obviously doesn't fly. An example probably being Japan, or some markets where taking the English and localizing it doesn't necessarily work, even though the page itself is like maybe a line, a headline, and a calculator type of thing. There's not much content in the page itself, and it's fine. That's what the intent of the page is like, but it just in that market maybe doesn't work. So with time, we are accommodating a bit the fact that some market might get a bit more custom, like type of products and experiences as opposed to other, but roughly majority of it comes from English, in the most sense. And then to answer your last question in terms of like, we localize to most of the markets where we are. Actually, we even produce content for places where we're not. And the reason why is mostly two. One, at some point we're gonna get there, and so before when we started in UK only, and then we expanded to all the other markets in Europe, I was literally, and people in the team were literally playing catch up. We were launching a new market, and then they were like, "Where are the pages? Or why are we not ranking there?" I'm like, "Yes, but I haven't built the pages, right? we haven't translated it yet." So originally we were in this catch up mode, and then at some point we got even faster than the product team. So now we are at the stage where we already know that maybe something is coming in a quarter to a year to time, and we still build the page now, because the day that the product manager decide to launch the market, then we don't want to hear why are we not ranking. We're already ranking, but we probably have a wish list. We probably have some kind of fallback mechanism to say, hey, this is the page for a product that is not there, right? And so this is one. The second is we have realized that our audience is pretty international. And sometimes, this was happening also because in some situation we were turning on and off some markets. Sometimes the regulatory environment changed and you have to switch off the product and things like that. And in that case, we were saying, okay, but are we going to delete the pages? We are ranking pretty well. Like, why am I going to delete the pages? And because our audience is pretty international, it happens sometimes that we acquire customers in markets where we're not technically serving the customer. Why? Because people that have got their address country and they are resident of other markets end up being there as an expat, or end up spending a period of their life there, or like just on holiday, or for multiple reasons. So there's a couple of markets where we never ever launched product, yet we are acquiring customers right now. So I'm pretty pro on this, because the day you go into serving different languages for intents that you have validated, and you kind of have a product, it's unlikely that it's not going to work, right? If someone is searching for something in Italian as opposed to English, if they want that thing, is maybe in Italy you will have slightly lower conversion rate, maybe as opposed to UK, maybe the product will be a little bit different, but it's unlikely that people will not need it, right? Like unless there's a completely different meaning of that intent, there's a good chance that you serving the same intent in just another language, and obviously with a relatively localized page that is relevant to that market, it's unlikely that it's not going to work, as opposed to you having to figure out, I go into this new market, let me invent something new, and that's where you might get it right, but also you might get it wrong, as opposed to replicating what you're doing. It's relatively straightforward. Most of the startup, I think that do like us, that they start with one market or two and then they expand internationally like we did. I think that internationalization is the easiest way to grow, because you just replay the same playbook that you have been doing. And this is not just SEO. You do the same on Facebook ads, you do the same on Google ads and things like that. The only difference that is the day you start getting closer to China, where the Google that is not the same. Facebook, the ads that cannot be turned on and things like that. And that's where probably your effort to like grow internationally outside the market where you are becomes harder, not because of the market itself, yes, maybe a little bit, but also because of the platforms, right? You encounter a new set of platforms, as opposed to if you need to do the same stuff that we've been doing on Google, just enabling another folder on the website, that's pretty straightforward, right? There's not it takes work, but it's not an incognito, right? Like it's something that we know.
So many great insights there. I don't know. I have so many other questions that I'd like to ask, but unfortunately, we run out of time. I will ask just a couple of two before we bring this to a close. Um, at such a big scale, I guess that you have so much information on the website in different languages, targeting different markets, and so on. Do you care? Obviously, you care, but do you care at all about the accuracy of this information, making sure that we audit things so that they are up to date and fresh and so on? And do you have, like, as part of your routines or processes, content audits, or audits in general, both on the technical side and the content side as well?
Yeah. Yeah, obviously we are a financial institution, and we are regulated in a bunch of countries with different authorities, and there's the probably two obligation. One is to regulators, right, to not say something that is against what the regulators believe is correct, and there's part of the process around this, and also in the way that we make claims and the way that we present price comparison data and things like that. Then the other aspect is more related to SEO and user experience of the customers. Is the fact that if I'm reading an article or if I'm in a page that the information is outdated or is not that relevant anymore, I don't get much value as a customer. So there are like probably two processes. One is to ensure that we are compliant across the various jurisdictions that we are. The other is to make sure that the content is up to date as well as is still ranking, right? So if we have, I don't know, a guide on how to relocate to a country that is 6 years old, it might be that the visa requirements for people have changed, right? And therefore we need to update it. And so there's like a content aspect related to that, so that there's some people that need to take time to figure out what's changing, and there are processes to probably go back to old stuff, as well as probably technicalities around that, because sometimes Google doesn't get the grasp of like whether the local authority law have changed, but you need to still update the content somehow so that the Google perceive that this is fresh, right? And we don't do it for the sake of Google. We often do it because there's enough things changing that grant you to having to change the article. So we don't do any trick to make sure that Google feel that it's more fresh than it used to be. We often tend to update the content because the content needs updating. And trust me, the day you produce thousands and thousands of blog posts every month, every quarter, and then you fast forward a few years, you end up with a pile of content that is to be updated, right? We didn't feel this for a while, so our editorial team was just producing new content on and on and on for the first 3 years, and so we didn't resource time and people to actually update the content that we had, because we only produce evergreen content. We don't do a lot of seasonal content. We don't do fresh content like news type of stuff. We only do something that you could be searching in a few years' time. So the first 2-3 years producing it went really fine, and so we say, okay, perfect, right? But then we obviously were a bit naive of the fact that in 5 years' time, that content definitely needed some rework. And so a couple of years ago, we started to realize that content that we made in 2016, 17 was starting to not do as well as it used to be. And then realized that within the editorial team, we needed to allocate from the same people, but we need to allocate X amount of time to refresh content as well as producing new one. We obviously set up to produce new content. That's what we try to strive on. Yet we don't. Yeah, we realized that we don't need to forget about the old one that was working and was driving customers. Otherwise, you gain a little bit from the new one, but then you lose from the old one, and then you're back to the beginning in terms of overall growth numbers. So yeah, that's definitely happening.
I like that. So last question that I have for you, and then we can wrap things up. You are in this industry for quite a while now. I don't know how close you are specifically to, software, content marketing or SEO, anything around that. But I would like to hear your opinion on what do you think or feel or expect the future holds for SaaS companies when it comes to SEO and organic growth in general?
Mm-hmm. Yeah. like regardless of, I mean, what I'm mostly close, and in the past few years, I've been spending time with startups similar to us as well, just to get my head around slightly different problem than waking up every morning to to think about what we do. I think that there's probably different elements. One is the stage at which the company is on, and the investment that goes with it in SEO. Then there are waves of people looking for actual profitability as opposed to just dreams, and we are definitely in one of them right now. So like a few years ago, where we were investing heavily in like low cost growth, as opposed to turn on a million of unprofitable ads. Probably some people were not thinking that we were super smart, or at least they were like, they're okay, but they could be growing faster. As opposed to now that we took us time to build an engine around some stuff. We see the benefit. The risk probably is when you're early stage, but these days I think it's changed quite a bit. I speak to many companies early stage that they are already thinking about it, and they're already committed to it. It's often me that is telling them, maybe guys, it's a bit too early to really invest in a lot of content and SEO just because you don't even have a product, right? And maybe it isn't the fastest way to validate that within the next 6 months. But then I see that there's quite a bit of a change, which is positive in the sense that like people are already thinking about building teams. Is less of when I first joined Wise, my first day in the office, I wasn't yet an employee. I was going to start after 2 weeks, and my previous lead asked me to go on the team call and explain what SEO is. Like I felt like some kind of magician. I was like, hey, I'm coming to do something. And then there were people that were like, oh, but I'm skeptical about this. I don't know if it's, I mean, we were at the stage where some people in the business didn't treat it so seriously, right? Even though back in time there were already many companies, right, doing SEO. It was, it was a job, right? So I think within early stage companies, I hope that there is more investment early. The challenge though, like on investing early, is the appetite for growth that you have when you're getting started, as opposed to the speed at which SEO growth materialize, right? And that's where again is very hard balance between having to validate that you have a good product and to be able to prove that effectively pretty quickly, and then at the same time put in X amount of resources that will not give you anything this month, but will give you, way better results in the next 6, 18 months, and depending what's going on. I think, but in terms of like future and changes, I see that, more people are becoming mindful about it when I chat to them, and I think it's good. Then, there is still the hard part of things like hiring the first SEO, right? I spoke to quite a few companies, and literally the only thing that I did with them is to help them vet that the first SEO is a real SEO, not just someone that comes there and try to mumble something around it, right? So I think there are still these very hard challenges, and you have to convince someone experienced and senior and relatively in demand in the market to come to work in your company with no resources, with no teams, and but regardless of this challenge, I think it's going to stay there forever. There are more people that are even thinking about it very early, and I think it's cool. And there's more like, and I hope that in our case we are quite religious about investing all in house in all the team and treating this thing very seriously. I hope that the company like us give them an example of like you can treat this seriously, right? And you can invest in it either early days with a fully in-house team, or at some point working with agencies as well, because depending on where you are, it's best to find the right setup. But I hope that more people, I can see more people are treating this investment seriously early on, and which is good.
I hope as well. Well, that was extremely insightful, and I don't say that lightly. This may be one of the best episodes that we have done. The last question that I have for you, the call to action for our listeners, where can people find out more about you and get in touch if they'd like to?
Mostly on Twitter or LinkedIn. On LinkedIn, just my name, and on Twitter is my video game nickname PECHNET. But if you just Google my name, I think you can find me.
Okay, we will drop those in the show notes so that people can click on them and reach out right away. Well, Fabrizio, thank you very much for this. It was really, really insightful, and looking forward to part B, where you will have to share even more exciting things about how you do things at Wise.
Okay, we try. Thanks a lot. Thanks for having me here.
Thank you. Before you go, I'd like to give a quick shout out to the sponsor for this episode, Ahrefs. Ahrefs provides you with an all-in-one SEO toolset that does everything from rank tracking to backlink analysis, keyword research, and technical audits. The best part, you can now use Ahrefs Webmaster Tools for free to identify and prioritize optimization opportunities for your website, see all the keywords that your web pages are ranking for, take a close look at the websites that link back to and refer you in their content, and analyze other websites to find out what drives their rankings. Visit ahrefs.com/AWT and sign up for free.